Have you ever heard children laughing when no one else is around? I'm not talking about a neighbor's kid playing in their yard, or a TV left on somewhere in the background. I mean real laughter, close and clear in an empty building, echoing off walls that haven't seen life in years. Laughter that doesn't stop when it should. Laughter that doesn't belong to anything human anymore. I've been carrying this inside me for the past 17 months. I tried to convince myself it was just stress, a hallucination, maybe a kind of grief reaction after losing my wife. But I know better now. Some things aren't meant to be explained away. Some places hold on to what we leave behind, and some of what we leave behind learns how to wait. My name's Mark Wexler. I'm 53 years old, a career janitor with over 30 years under my belt. I've cleaned strip malls, nursing homes, truck stops, even a church once that scared me so bad I left mid-shift and never went back. I've seen needles in bathroom stalls and blood in gym lockers. None of that prepared me for this. I took the night shift at Briar Glen Elementary because it was supposed to be easy. It was a favor, really. The school had been shut down for renovations 2 years earlier, but the district still needed someone to check the grounds, sweep for mold, keep the pipes from freezing, that sort of thing. No students, no teachers, just an empty building and 6 quiet hours every night, 5 nights a week. This was supposed to be the calmest job I ever had. It was my second night there when I first heard it. Children, laughing, and nothing has been the same since. Briar Glen Elementary sat at the edge of town, just past the tree line where the hills start to rise into forested fingers. It was built in 1964, a squat red brick rectangle, with sun-faded murals along the old pickup loop and rust-eaten playground equipment leaning like wilted flowers in an overgrown field. The school shut down officially in 2017 after a fire damaged the east wing, but truth is, enrollment had been dropping for years. Parents whispered about it being cursed. Teachers transferred out in droves. Even the local teens didn't vandalize it. They stayed away. It wasn't the kind of place anyone missed. Still, the district didn't want to admit it was condemned. There were talks of revitalization, new grants, federal funds, all nonsense. They just wanted someone to make sure the roof didn't collapse before they figured out how to quietly demolish it. That someone turned out to be me. The job came through an old union buddy, Rick. He didn't say much on the phone, just that the last guy left without notice and that the building had a few quirks, plumbing, mostly. I didn't think twice about it. I needed the work. I signed the papers and got the keys. I remember my first night walking up to that place. The air was dead still, like everything around the school had gone quiet in protest. No crickets, no traffic, just the metallic scrape of my key in the front door and the hollow sound of it swinging open. Inside it smelled like old paper and dust, stale water. The halls were longer than I remembered from my walkthrough, longer than they should have been. The lights buzzed when they came on, flickering just enough to make shadows feel like they moved. I chalked it up to age. The fire had gutted most of the east classrooms, but the main building was still intact. Office, gym, cafeteria, library, and the bell, that damn bell. Every hour on the hour, it chimed through the intercom system, soft, warped, like it had been slowed down a fraction of a second too long. No one could figure out how to turn it off. Old system, Rick had told me. Hardwired, just let it run. I thought it was eerie, sure, but not enough to scare me off. I'd start every shift with a walkthrough, main hallway, locker wings, cafeteria, then back through the gym and out to the courtyard. Most nights it was fine, quiet, routine, the kind of job where you could listen to a podcast and let your thoughts drift. I even started bringing a thermos of coffee and a little Bluetooth speaker to play some jazz. But by the end of that first week, the building started feeling different. Heavier, like the walls were listening. And then I found the basement door. It was tucked behind a supply closet in the north wing, half covered by a folding chalkboard. I don't remember seeing it on the building map. It had no label, just a dented steel frame with a blackened handle, no padlock, no sign. When I opened it, a gust of cold air hit me like a punch to the lungs. Not just cold, wrong. Like stepping into a freezer lined with wet concrete. I stared into the dark stairwell and suddenly felt like I was trespassing somewhere I had no business being. I didn't go down, not that night, but I knew with every part of me that something was waiting down there, something that hadn't been touched by sunlight in a long time. It started subtly, little things, barely worth noting at first. The kind of oddities you shrug off during a long, lonely shift, because the alternative is believing something you're not ready to face. I remember one night, I think it was my 4th or 5th, I walked into the cafeteria and found all the chairs stacked on top of the tables, neat, balanced, perfect. Now I'm not saying I'm the most organized guy in the world, but I know I didn't stack them. I'd swept that room earlier. Every chair was down. I told myself maybe Rick had come by. Maybe he'd done it before leaving the paperwork in the Dropbox. That made sense, except he hadn't signed in, and I never heard the front door. Then the clocks started acting up. They ran fast, almost an hour every night. I'd reset them, and by morning they were ahead again. All of them, every single one. Office, library, gym, didn't matter, and always by the same amount of time. 47 minutes. I only noticed the pattern after the third night. I even wrote it down in my logbook. Clocks, saw 47 min. Consistent. I remember looking at the numbers and feeling this tight, creeping unease curl in my stomach. It was too purposeful. Then came the temperature shifts. Some nights, the library felt like a sauna, like the air was pressing against your skin. The gym, just a few doors down, would be freezing, breath in the air cold. The HVAC system was off, no power draw, no recent activity. The thermostat was disconnected entirely. But the strangest thing, the laughter, it started as faint as static, a little rise and fall buried in the hum of the fluorescent lights. I'd be walking down the main hallway, mop bucket squeaking behind me, and I'd stop thinking I heard that subtle echo of a giggle. At first I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. Isolation does that, makes the brain crave sound, fills in the silence with familiar things. But then it got louder, and I wasn't just hearing it in the distance anymore. I was hearing it through the intercom. Late one night, just before 2 a.m., the loudspeakers crackled to life. No chime, no pre-tone, just sudden noise like a mic being picked up too fast. And then clear as day, laughter, childlike, giddy, dozens of voices, all overlap, and then just as quickly, cut off, silence. I stared up at the speaker like it was going to answer me. I walked to the office, checked the old PA board, dusty, disconnected, power long since dead. There was no explanation, none. I stood there feeling something crawl beneath my skin, and in that moment, I understood something very clearly. I was not alone in that building, not by a long shot. That night, I went home and didn't sleep. I kept trying to tell myself there had to be a rational answer. Some leftover radio frequency, a squirrel in the ducks, a prank maybe. But I couldn't shake what I felt, because it wasn't just laughter, it was familiar, like a memory, one I couldn't quite place. I tried to push it out of my head. At first, the laughter, the chairs, the clocks. I told myself I was overworked, still grieving, seeing patterns where there weren't any. That's what trauma does, right? It rewires your sense of cause and effect. That's what I believed, until I found the records room. It was pure accident. I was cleaning out the old nurse's office, trying to scrub out some mildew that had started creeping in from the corners, when I noticed the panel behind the coat rack was cracked at the hinge. Not broken, not kicked in, just displaced. Like someone had pried it open a long time ago and never quite sealed it right. Behind it was a door, no knob, just a recessed handle. Inside, no lights, no windows, just a narrow corridor that led to a storage room I had never seen on any map. A room full of boxes, paper records mostly, attendance logs, incident reports, yearbooks going back decades, dusty and warped with time. The first thing I pulled out was a detention ledger from 1992. The front page was stained with something reddish-brown, flaked like dried blood. My fingers trembled as I flipped through it, not because of the punishments listed but because of the names. Many of them were crossed out, not in pen, in deep, scored grooves, like someone had tried to erase them by force. But one entry stopped me cold. March 11, 1992. Student Angela Hurley. Infraction, disruptive laughter during moment of silence. Laughter. I flipped ahead. March 12, Angela Hurley. Absent. March 13, Angela Hurley. Absent. No withdrawal notice. No medical leave. Just gone. I found her name again in the yearbook for 1991. Third grade. Class photo. But when I looked at the photo, something was wrong. There was a blank space between two students. Just a smudge of gray, like the film had been damaged. No other part of the page was touched. Just that one spot. Right where the caption read, Angela H. I dug deeper. More names, more disappearances. All children. All between 1989 and 1993. Every last one with a behavioral note attached to it. Laughter during math. Disturbing jokes at lunch. Inappropriate singing. There were patterns in the margins. Notes written in a different pen. Different hand, frantic. Repetitive. The laughter never stops. They hear her in the walls. She said they told her to laugh. At this point I wasn't sleeping much. I'd leave the building each morning, as the sun rose, and sit in my car staring at the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I was finding. I didn't want to believe it, but I kept going back, night after night, because it wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was need. Obsession. I started hearing the laughter more clearly, sometimes whispering right behind me, sometimes echoing from rooms I'd just locked. One night, I opened the gymnasium, to find all the basketballs out of their cages, bouncing on their own. No breeze. No slow, just slow, steady bouncing, as if an invisible game had started without me. That was the first night I said something out loud. "Who's there?" And for the first time, something answered. A child's voice. Close. Sweet. "She's not done yet." And then the intercom clicked back on, and the laughter came rising, swelling, until the whole building sounded like recess in hell. I ran, made it outside, didn't stop until I reached my truck. When I came back the next night, the nurse's panel was shut, welded shut, and all the files were gone. The next morning, I drove to the district office. I'd convinced myself this was still something explainable, that maybe the building had a history no one talked about, an old scandal, some buried incident the school wanted to erase. There had to be a paper trail. I didn't say anything about the laughter, or the voices. I just told the clerk I was doing a routine audit, building history, previous staff, incident reports, that sort of thing. She smiled like she believed me, even brought out a thick binder marked Briar Glen Archive. And just like that, I had my false trail. The records looked legitimate, neat, sterile, sterilized. Nothing about Angela Hurley, no missing children, no behavior or complaint. In fact, according to that binder, there were 0 student expulsions or major incidents at Briar Glen, from 1989 through the exact years I'd found in the hidden files. I asked about the janitor who worked there before me, the one who left without note. She flipped through a few sheets, frowned and said, "Looks like he didn't file a resignation. That happens sometimes. Do you know his name?" Peter Elswick. That name stuck with me, not just because it was the first real lead I'd gotten, but because I remembered it from somewhere else. I drove straight to the county clerk's office, and requested a public record search on Peter Elswick. The clerk didn't ask questions, just typed for a while, and then gave me that mixture of pity and unease you only get from people who've seen something in your request they'd rather not explain. Peter Elswick died in 2022, self-inflicted gunshot wound, inside Briar Glen Elementary. 3 months before I took the job, there was a report sealed by the district. No public statement, no mention in the local news, just a quiet removal, and a name scratched off the payroll. He'd been the last night janitor. I sat in my truck for a long time after that, watching people go about their lives like everything made sense, like the world was still normal. I knew better now. There were cracks in it, and something in Briar Glen was crawling up through them. That night, I went back to the school. I don't know why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the feeling that if I didn't go back, if I didn't finish what I started, then I'd end up like Peter, alone. Terrified. Silenced. The front door was unlocked when I got there. I know I'd locked it the night before. Inside, the lights were on in the hallway, just one, leading all the way to the east wing, the part damaged by the fire. The part the district said was too dangerous to enter. But now, it was open, exposed, like an invitation. I followed the lights, step by step, each bulb humming louder as I approached, each shadow bending slightly the wrong way, like the corners of the walls didn't obey normal geometry anymore. I reached the fire doors. Beyond them, black scorch marks still coated the floor, creeping up the lockers like skeletal fingers. And at the far end of the hall, painted in red, not spray paint, but thick, dripping brush strokes, were the words, "Peter saw her." I didn't breathe, didn't blink. And then something laughed, right behind me. Not a voice, not a whisper. A choir. Children. Dozens of them, all laughing at once. I turned, but the hall was empty, and then the fire alarm screamed. Sprinklers erupted, the lights flickered out, and for a brief moment I saw them, small figures, outlines made of soot and ash, standing in each doorway, watching. Wait, and just before the emergency lights kicked in, I heard one of them say, "She's coming." After that night, I stopped thinking like a janitor. I stopped thinking like a man, trying to make rent or find a reason to keep going. I started thinking like a survivor. The fire alarm incident wasn't a warning. It was a shift. Whatever had been circling the edges of my nights was no longer content with shadows and whispers. It had a voice now. A presence. And she, whoever she was moving closer. The next day, I didn't report the fire door breach. I didn't tell anyone about the message on the wall or the voices. I went back to my notes. I pieced everything together, the names, the dates, the patterns. I made a list of the children who disappeared, every single one I could trace through yearbooks, attendance sheets, even scraps from that vanished records room. 23 children who laughed too much, who sang out of turn, who disrupted the wrong kind of silence. And among them, one name came up again and again, not on the rosters, but in the margins, written in pencil, in different handwriting each time. Like a word whispered from ear to ear. Marnie. Sometimes just that. Other times, Marnie was there. Marnie told me the joke, don't listen to Marnie. Find Marnie before she finds you. That last one was in a detention slip, dated April 3rd. The name of the student had been blacked out with marker so thick it bled through the page. But beneath it, faint, pressed into the paper like a scar. Marnie Cartwright. It rang in my head like a bell. I started digging county birth records, missing person reports, property database. Marnie Cartwright was real, born 1981, enrolled at Briar Glen in 1988. Last official record, an accidental death, during a field trip in 1990, except that field trip was cancelled. Storms had flooded the roads that week. The bus never left the lot, but the death certificate remained. No body found. No burial listed, just a signature at the bottom. And that's what made my blood run cold, because the person who signed off on her death, Principal Everett Bowles, the same man who ran Briar Glen from the same man who, according to the staff registry, never left the building. He died inside it, heart failure, alone, locked in his office. I felt like I was unraveling a knot, tied in bone and sin. Like every step I took toward the truth made the air colder, the lights dimmer, the shadows stretch farther. I needed proof. Not notes, not whispers, something solid. So I broke into Bowles's old office. The door was warped. The lock had long since rusted. Inside the room was sealed in dust. Shelves warped from water damage. The smell of mold and old paper thick enough to taste. His desk was still there, still locked. I forced it open with a crowbar. Inside a single manila folder, no label, just a small pink paperclip holding it shut. I opened, and I swear to you, I felt her. The temperature dropped, my breath fogged. Inside the folder were drawings, children's drawings, all of them in crayon and pencil, red and black, dominating every page. Smiling stick figures with blank eyes, a swing set with a figure underneath, hanging upside down, a hallway made of teeth, and in the center of every drawing, a girl, always the same, long black hair, no face, labeled in shaky lettering, Marnie. In the last page, Bowles's handwriting. She's not one of them. She's old. She's older than all of this. They laugh because she laughs, but she never stops. And beneath that, scrawled like it was carved with a fingernail, the laughter is her mouth. I left the office with the drawings in my backpack, but as I turned to close the door, I heard it again, that small, clear giggle, right behind me. And then, someone whispered directly into my ear. You said my name. From the moment I said her name, Marnie, something changed. It wasn't just that I heard her more clearly, it was that I felt like the school had stopped being a building and started becoming an extension of her. The vents, the wiring, the pipes under the floor, they were her veins. Her voice didn't echo anymore. It traveled, it hunted. That night, I didn't bring the backpack home. I left it in my locker, locked tight, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. Marnie wasn't in the folder. She wasn't in the drawings. She was in the space between the walls, in the silence, between footsteps. I could feel her watching me every second I was inside. I tried to focus on routine janitor stuff, mop the cafeteria, check the boiler, empty the bins, pretend I wasn't being stalked by something that laughed like a child and moved like a thought. But I couldn't pretend anymore, not after what happened in the library. I remember the time exactly, because I looked at the big analog clock above the main shelves right before it happened. I was straightening the reference section when I heard the first whisper, just my name, Mark, soft, playful. Then again, louder, Mark. I turned, heart in my throat, no one there, just rows of books and that old paper smell. And then, thump. A book slid off the shelf behind me. I picked it up, an old Reader's Digest edition. I flipped through it without thinking. Page 37 was missing, ripped clean. In its place was something else. folded, yellowed paper tucked deep in the binding. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A drawing, crayon on lined notebook paper, a smiling sun, crooked swings, and 3 children standing in a row, but their faces were scratched out. Except one, the girl in the middle, hair down to her waist, eyes like hollow pits, and written in looping, childlike handwriting beneath the image. They made fun of my laugh. Now they laugh forever. I dropped the book, and that's when the shelves moved, not the books. Like something behind them was pressing forward, warping the metal frame outward with slow creaking force. Dust poured from the seams, and I heard it. Laughter. So much laughter. Children, dozens of them, behind the walls, cackling and shrieking and giggling, like they were being tickled by the devil himself. Some of them screamed in between, not laughs, screams trying to sound like laughter. Desperate, I backed out of the library, heart thundering, every instinct in my body screaming to run. But then came the voice again. Different this time, right beside me, whispering from the wall. You opened it, you read it, you're part of the joke now. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping in the cold air, like I just escaped a burning building. I should have never gone back, but I did, because I couldn't leave those drawings behind, and because something inside me, something sick, something curious, needed to know what the punchline was. The next night, the walls were quiet, but someone had been in my locker. The drawings were gone, and in their place was a single note, scratched in red pen across a torn page of my own logbook. You laugh next. After the note appeared in my locker. You laugh next. I stopped pretending I had a job. I wasn't there to sweep floors or check fire alarms anymore. I was there because something in that building had chosen me. I didn't know why, but I knew I couldn't leave. I tried. One called Rick, told him I was done. I even packed a bag, but every time I hit the highway the GPS would reroute me. Turnarounds, closed roads, fog so thick I couldn't see the road signs. And when I finally made it 20 miles out of town, my car died, just stopped. No warning, battery fine, engine silent. When I checked the rear view, the back seat was empty. Except for one thing, a red rubber ball, sitting perfectly still. I hadn't seen one since elementary school. I walked back, 8 miles. No cars passed me. No dogs barked. Just a silence, so deep it made my ears ring. By the time I got back to Briar Glen, the lights were on inside, waiting. I went back in, no questions left in me. Just this numb, sleepwalker feeling. Like I'd already lost but didn't yet know the terms. Everything inside had changed. The lockers were open. Every single one. And inside each was a child's shoe. Just one, lined up like trophies. Some scuffed, some still stained with playground dirt. Some burned. I walked the halls and realized I knew the route. I was being led first through the art wing, where the murals had peeled away to reveal handprints underneath. Tiny, darkened prints, pressed into plaster like they'd tried to claw their way out from inside the walls. Then into the music room, where every instrument sat in silence, except the piano. The lid was up, keys chipped, some broken, and sitting on the bench was a single drawing, crayon. Marnie again. Arms stretched wide, mouth too big. Behind her a shadow of children, limbs tangled, heads drooped, no face. And in the corner of the page, where kids usually scribble their names. Ms. Garrison said it was just pretend, so I showed her. That's when I realized something horrible. Marnie wasn't just a ghost. She was a teacher. Or something pretending to be. She was there long before she was a student. If she was ever a student at all. I dug through the faculty logs. Cross-referenced yearbooks. There was a Melissa Garrison, art teacher, hired 1985. She vanished in 1991. No police report, just a vacancy listed mid-year. The deeper I looked, the more patterns I saw. Each missing student had been marked as corrected by a staff member. Each staff member disappeared within a year of that entry. Except one, Principal Bowles. The last one to sign off. On Marnie Cartwright. He wasn't part of the pattern. He was the end of it. Or so I thought, because that night, when I went back to the boiler room, my unofficial break room, I found something waiting. Not Marnie. Not the children. A man. Sitting in my chair, wearing my uniform. Same shirt, same patch, even had my name on. He didn't look up. Didn't speak, just sat there, humming, softly. Then he laughed, slow, hollow, like someone remembering the sound but not the feeling, and when I blinked, he was gone. But the chair was still warm, and carved into the wall behind it. The substitute is ready. It took me days to understand what the message meant. The substitute is ready. Days of wandering the school with my stomach tied in knots, half dreading, and half waiting, for the moment Marnie would finally come for me. I kept trying to piece together what I'd seen. The children's laughter, the disappearances, the shadows behind the shelves, all of it pointed to one unthinkable conclusion. Marnie didn't just haunt the school, she ran it. Like a headmistress of the forgotten, an invisible authority binding the walls together through memory and every few years, the cycle began again. A new group of children, a new set of disappearances, and always, always, a substitute. The one who stayed behind to keep her game going. Peter had been that substitute before me, and now, it was my turn. I know how it sounded, like I was unraveling, losing my grip on reality. But then came the night that confirmed everything. The night she showed me what she needed me to become. I woke up in the nurse's cot. Not sure how I got there. I was still wearing my uniform, still had my key ring, but my watch gone, my phone dead. The lights overhead buzzed with that flickering green tint that always made the walls seem alive. On the chair beside me, a clipboard, with a single piece of paper clipped to it, a class roster, my name listed at the top under instruct, and below that, 23 names. All the children who had vanished. Angela Hurley, Dale Watts, Elise McKinnon. The list went on, and next to each name tick marks, 3 columns present. Laughing, taken. I flipped the page, blank space, just one note written in red ink. Don't let them stop laughing, or she'll come for you next. That's when the door to the nurse's office slammed shut. Hard, so hard the cabinets shook and one of the supply bins fell off the shelf. I stood, hard hammer, reached for the door but it wouldn't budge. Then I heard it again. The children, not laughing this time, weeping. Dozens of tiny voices sobbing through the walls, some calling for their mothers, some whispering things I couldn't understand, and beneath it all the piano, one key, over and over, plink, plink, plink. I followed the sound. Don't ask me how I couldn't see the hallways clearly. They'd shifted. The school didn't obey normal geometry anymore, but somehow I found myself back in the music room. The piano played itself. One key, same rhythm, and then all at once, the keys slammed down, a dissonant scream of sound that made me drop to my knees, clutching my ears. And that's when she stepped out from the corner. Not a child, not quite. Her limbs were too long, her smile too wide, her eyes, completely gone, just pits of shadow that seemed to move, pulsing like breathing holes in wet soil. Marnie. She looked at me, tilted her head, and whispered in a voice that came from the walls. The vents. The floor beneath me. Your class is waiting. And behind her, the desks filled, one by one. Little figures, burnt, bruised, blurry, each one looking at me with silent mouths stretched into unnatural grins. And they laughed. Oh God, they laughed. The kind of laughter that scrapes across your soul, hollow, endless. I ran. I didn't know. I just ran. Until the halls became halls again. Until the walls stopped bleeding. I made it to the janitor's closet and locked myself inside. I sat there for hours, maybe days, gripping the roster, the only thing keeping me tethered, because now I knew what Marnie wanted. She needed someone to watch them, to keep the laughter going, because the moment it stopped, she'd come back.